would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
To Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. I kind of want to get into this whole, how much is it? It was $400 million cash to Iran for the American prisoners freed. I want to get into that because part of that, too, is they got this from central banks, and it's not the Federal Reserve, which kind of plays a part into this. But, when we look at how, $400 million cash, of course they probably made some type of, print it up, put it on the Federal Reserve tab. Who knows how this whole thing was actually fully constructed behind the scenes. But really, the cash is made out of thin air. And how the global markets are so intertwined with each other. We have a serious crisis with the West versus the East type deal, Russia and China, versus the West, and it's really, there's no, winner in this whole thing because, these are powers fighting other powers, for ultimate, dominance as a world power. And we have things like let me go ahead and turn the volume here. Okay, hopefully that is better. When we look at this global currency battle and the global powers fighting for this control, there's two types of world controls that they're looking for. We have the Western globalist. They do want to have this dominance over, Europe and America and Canada, and, they want to tie all these allies together under a central power. And you can look at the United Nations. You can look at NATO to an extent. It's one of those things that in itself is one danger. Now we have also where you can look at Russia and China with their view of a new world order, thinking they can do it better and it's always the Western world's fault why it didn't work. Well, in a way, that plays a part, but it's easy to exploit a failed system. And the direction that America is headed is in a direction that these countries are familiar with in their own history. They understand the flaws and the weaknesses and the failures of those types of systems. Of course, they are trying to revolutionize their idea of how to construct their system from their failures, but they're seeing us make those same failures. Therefore, it makes it easy exploitation. You know, Glenn Beck came out today talking about, you know, how Russia can exploit Trump or Clinton. They probably have a lot of dirt on Clinton that they might not release the most damning parts unless she does get elected. And then the whole playing Trump's buddy and being able to maybe manipulate his ego. Now, you can exploit in those senses, but they also have a willingness to exploit currencies and basically pulling us through the same thing that they were pulled through in Afghanistan. And, you know, again, history repeating itself, because we have had those socialist, communist, and fascist type people that have spread their ideology across America, and they leave out all the failures, or they blame all the failures only on, well, you know, the Soviet Union would have lasted if it wasn't for, you know, all these covert manipulations and, you know, Margaret Thatcher, Bin Laden. Well, yeah, all that played a factor to a point, but in a exploited system, a system that, you know, it was easy to take down. And not just because maybe, you know, that they were weak. It was that you get into a situation where you got so many internal battles, you can't fight the external in a way that you need. Or also you can make the external battles so bad, or you can propagandize the problem so bad for those countries, you know, saying that we you know, have, here's one example from history, you know, a shield that will stop any nuclear attempted attack on the U.S., basically a missile shield, before you have the technology. And you make the other person spend into oblivion. And then they don't have the means to fulfill all their free stuff internally. Again, other countries are learning from this. I will get into that. I do want to get into this Ron Paul Liberty report about the investigation on the managing director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, and how the Greek crisis was mishandled. Let's go ahead and get into this. It's should the IMF director be fired, and does it matter? And I say that it won't matter because I don't think anybody is paying attention, and how many people that are paying attention really truly understand, what the IMF is. So let's go ahead and get into this.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
Good morning, Dr. Paul.
Well, in the news, we have a story about the IMF. A close associate, friends that I have at the IMF. I've said only good things about the IMF, obviously being very facetious, but the director of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, is sort of under the gun from some things she did as financial director when she was still just representing France, but now that she's been the director of the IMF, there's a lot of failures and a lot of shenanigans going on, and some people are calling for her to leave the IMF. So what seems to be the problem? Why are people now ganging up on our side to get rid of Lagarde?
Well, it's interesting, and one of the things that fascinates me about this case is I think it's a huge case, but the mainstream media, except for a few exceptions, Ambrose Evan Pritchard being one, who's a very good financial journalist, are ignoring it. And this is the IMF's own independent evaluation office took a look at the IMF's handling of the Greek crisis and the bailouts, Greece and Portugal, and then they found that the IMF was absolutely lacking in transparency, completely disregarding the rules of the IMF. For example, they should have agreed. They forced austerity on Greece. By IMF rules, they should have also demanded a haircut. They should have demanded some debt relief. But for political reasons, i.e., to help the big banks, she disregarded that part on her own and simply put it all on the backs of the Greek citizens.
That seems to be the case. That was certainly the case on the bailouts in 08 and 09 when our Federal Reserve and all these international organizations were involved. That we've been talking about this for a long time, that they always bail out the special interest. But I think you touched on the most important thing, no transparency. And I mean, that's the whole thing that we argue against the Federal Reserve, and that's why we want an audit to at least find out what they're doing. But it was designed that way. I mean, I don't think they just drift over to this. I think that it's been that way from the very beginning. So, but people do suffer from this, and it's very, very powerful. And I'm convinced also that these institutions like the IMF are not completely separate from international foreign policy as well as our foreign policy, along with European foreign policy when we start talking about what we're going to do around the world. Once they talk about freezing assets and putting on sanctions, the IMF is always involved in this. So it is an arm of the interventionist foreign policy, or vice versa, or they all work together. And I think that's why this is a big issue. I just sort of hope that it stays in the forefront and people hear about it, because maybe there will be enough pressure put on her to resign or get kicked out or something. That's not going to be the solution. But keeping it in the news, I think, is important.
There was not long ago so much attention to the 1% versus the 99%. I think with this case, it makes it so absolutely clear that the IMF does the bidding of the 1%. And, Lagarde's background was no secret. She's actually being forced to stand trial for some actions that she committed when she was France's foreign minister in 2008. She approved 400 million euros in taxpayer dollars to go to an investor who had lost some money because supposedly Credit Lyonnais undervalued the value of his investment. It's a complicated thing, but when it came to a crisis, she took $400 million out of the French taxpayer and handed it to one of her buddies. And She's facing a trial. It should be a pretty big, scandalous trial, wasting €500 million. But guess what the penalty is going to be for her if she's convicted?
I bet it's going to be tough.
Maximum 1 year and $15,000 fine.
Not a bad investment, is it?
$400 million.
You know, the way this was set up really protects them from where are they going to get the money to do this? How do they manage their fund? But they're able to create money too, not at the rate they would like to, but the special drawing rights is something that was designed in 1944 with the Bretton Woods Agreement, and they can issue these. And this is paper gold, and some people wanted to make it the reserve currency of the world. They still would like to. They can still create SDRs, you know, and people can benefit from this. So they have financing, and of course at times they go back to each country. But what if they come to us for an increase of funding of the IMF? There may be a little opposition to it, but so don't disrupt the international finances. But even if we did literally send some funds, where does our government get it? They get it from the Federal Reserve creating money out of thin air. So it's all a game they play.
Yeah, and they say that, you know, if you talk about the IMF and global control of things, you know, it sounds like some kind of conspiracy theorist. But here it is. It's laid out in black and white that the IMF exists to serve the elite. There's no accountability to the people. We can't vote out the IMF. Nobody cares what we think about the IMF. You know, we have absolutely no control over it whatsoever.
Well, when I think about the IMF, I think of what George Bush said when they brought in the WTO. He says, this is the third leg of the New World Order. First, we have the World Bank and the IMF, and now the World Trade, the WTO. And it's globalism is what we're talking about. We know a lot about our problems here at home, and the shenanigans go on and what they do in secret. But there's a worldwide globalist movement that's even more difficult to understand or more difficult to get the average American to even get interested in. But there's a healthy skepticism building and growing. You know, I don't think I ever got into trouble by bringing up globalism in this negative sense, and the controls by the United Nations and going to war without declaration and NATO and these things. So I think there's some friends out there that are sick and tired of all this, but the more information we can get out, the better.
And this is not conspiracy theory. You just look at the numbers. It's conspiracy fact. This is what happened. Lagarde threw aside the rules of the IMF because she wanted to protect the political enterprise called the European Union. She wanted to protect German banks, which were the financial core of the European Union. That's who she served, and it's completely out there in black and white.
Right. And, you know, the IMF was established at Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in 1944, and it was a big deal. The war wasn't completely over, but they knew it was going to be over, so they were lying. They were conspiring to what they were going to do with the monetary order. We were the wealthiest. We were the least injured by the war. We held the most gold, so we were key to it. And in theory, we could dictate to them on our terms. But there was one person that, as far as I'm concerned, was probably one of the greatest financial writers of the 20th century, and that was Henry Hazlitt, who befriended Mises when Mises came over here and escaped the Nazis. So, but he was right on this. I think he refused to go. Immediately said this was bad news and that we shouldn't be involved in this. And yet they totally ignore him. They pushed him aside. But he was absolutely right on warning about this. But the people went ahead, and of course our government went ahead and did the same. Went along with this conspiracy. One of these conspiracies that's a true conspiracy.
But you were saying earlier, some of the things that he wrote were so prescient at the time, in the 40s, that he wrote about the IMF.
Yeah, he was writing back then and said that it would be, massive inflation would destroy the dollar. He probably would have predicted that the dollar system would have ended. He sort of predicted 1971. He knew Bretton Woods wouldn't last, but my guess would have been that he'd have been surprised that they held the dollar standard together for so long, but it just built this much bigger bubble. But even back then, it was known that our key negotiator wasn't exactly an honorable citizen. And the person that we had doing all our negotiations was Harry Dexter White. And even as early as 1945, it was well known that he was a Russian spy. So, but he was our negotiator. He eventually became, director of the IMF, and then they won about it. But people in the Birch Society and a few other organizations, would mention this, and they were totally blasted for being conspiratorial and all this. But it turns out that this is factual history now, and then you wonder why we end up with such a mess. But Keynes, I don't think he was accused of being a Russian spy, but he was, believe it or not, Lord Keynes was a Keynesian. And I want to read a quote that he had, because during this debate on the IMF in 1944, he went before the House of Lords to give them an update on exactly what he was going on, I guess to reassure the British. But Keynes urged Britain to adopt the plan precisely because he regarded it as inflationist. It would provide, he argued in the House of Lords. And he went on saying, we intend to retain control of our domestic rate of interest. Well, that sounds okay. So that we can keep it as low as it suits our purpose without interference from the ebb and flow of international capital movements or flight of hot money. If I have any authority to pronounce on what is and what is not the essence of a gold standard, I should say that this plan is the exact opposite of it. And of course, that's the opposite of the market. He doesn't want interest rates to be controlled by the ebb and flow of capital, but that's the way the gold standard works. So it was, an attack on the gold standard. Even at that time, Americans weren't allowed to own gold, and they could do a paper standard, and they would build it around the dollar. He saw the shortcomings of it. It was structured, to continue inflation at an international scale. Keynes had a very deep intent of using SDRs as the reserve currency. There's still a desire to do that, but I don't happen to believe the SDR, it's called a special drawing right, but it's a paper currency that the IMF uses just for on the books. So their desire, why do they want to inflate money? It's power and control. And is it our government against some other one? No, it's usually a conspiracy of certain countries, like the current case we're talking about here and now in the bailout, the Greece bailout, where they punished the people. Who did they protect? It was the French banks and the German banks. Yeah. And but there was a bailout, but there was a cost that they had to pass on, and somebody always has to suffer. But look at who suffered here in this country in the last 8 years. It's been the middle class. And this is, of course, what Mises predicted, that this whole idea of manipulation of currency and the destruction of currency affects the middle class more than anybody else. At least on the short run, the people in the good position, the big banks and the big corporations, they seem to do quite well. And the one thing that is not talked about very much, but I think it should get more attention, is something I've mentioned before, and that is the combination of finances and also foreign policy, because they can do a lot behind the scenes and prop up governments that seem to be just horribly evil governments, and we do and have done business with them, but the finances can be more secret, and they can help them out with these loans, and I think they can help, they obviously help out to prop up the stock market. If our plunge protection team wants to protect the stock market, they can easily work through these systems, shuttle a little bit of currency over to these central banks and buy up some futures and manipulate markets. I really believe that happens.
It seems like such common sense. It doesn't seem like rocket science. And you drew the connection between foreign policy and this Keynesian economic policy. But it seems obvious, if interventionism works so well, then why is the world in such a disaster? If Keynesianism, if zero interest rates, if negative interest rates work so well, why isn't Japan having the strongest recovery in the history of the world? Why isn't Europe recovering and being a strong economic powerhouse?
If inflation is good, and that's one of the goals of our Fed right now, is push up price inflation, Zimbabwe should have done pretty well, and Venezuela should have done pretty well, because they were able to push up consumer prices. But no, they never stop and think about it. Mistakes they cannot handle because, and this is why I don't think they'll ever change their mind. Even if they're a serious academic, they don't change their mind because it might, take 30 or 40 years of their intellectual pursuits and say, oh, I was on the wrong track and I was wrong. They can't do it. Psychologically, they can't accept it. It'll go back to sort of like in foreign policy. It's just the management. Intervention isn't a problem. We didn't keep the troops there long enough. We didn't have enough troops. We didn't have enough alliances with the wrong kind of people. It goes on and on. It's always the management, never the policy. And that's what we're suffering from today.
And that brings up the question that I wanted to ask you when we first decided on this topic. Because it seems to me right now the pressure is not building on the IMF over this. And surprise, surprise, it should be a bigger scandal. But if the pressure does start building, if journalists start writing about it, people start asking questions, we know what's going to happen. It's not going to be, okay, let's get rid of this, it's corrupt. It's going to be calls for reform, And I was going to ask you, what do you think reform would look like, and is that the way to go?
Well, isn't that good news? They're recognizing there's something wrong and they're going to have reform. Oh, another opportunity to bail out our friends and rearrange the chairs and work it out so special interests benefit. We should always be very, very cautious when they talk about reforms. The little bit of experience that we had in Washington, reforms was a warning sign. Reforms meant, yes, they may change things, but reform is supposed to be improve things, but it never improves things. It makes things worse. I think, as I mentioned about the beginning of the IMF, there were wise people who knew that it was wrong. I believe the word corruption is minor. If our key negotiator was a Russian spy, somebody should have suspected that there was something going on here. And it's not only is corrupt and for special interests, but economic nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. It defies history. It defies the notion that money has to have real value. I saw a report this morning on the internet which shows that people aren't buying bonds and people aren't buying stocks and they're not buying any paper assets. They don't want certainly government bonds, but they are buying hard assets. They're even, buying lands and buildings and production groups, but it was a move. They didn't say move to gold, but included it was a gold, but to the hard assets. I think that's a thing, a thing that is very significant. But what we need to do is not reform. I think we should copy out a little program that we've had for a few years. I think it was called End the Fed. I think it's time. No reform. End the IMF. How would that be?
Sounds like a good idea.
I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. I hope you keep an eye on the IMF. I know most of you already know a lot about the IMF and you don't think well of it. There's nothing beneficial to the IMF. It installs a system of international money and globalism, which is giving us nothing but grief and is going to get a lot worse. So this revelation of the problems the IMF is facing is very good. It calls attention to it. But the biggest thing is the issue that Daniel brought up, and that is the issue of reform. Yeah, they're going to reform it. No, we need to get rid of it. We need the marketplace. We need a gold standard. We need liberty. And we need property rights. All the things that would cancel out all this, rather than just institutionalizing these organizations, which they do in total secrecy, no transparency. That's characteristics, whether it's the IMF or the or the Federal Reserve or the World Bank, no transparency whatsoever. So that is what we need, and believe me, there's going to be an opportunity because this is just another sign of things not working well. They're not working well at the IMF. There is a limit. You can't dump on the middle class forever. It's also one of the reasons why the middle class, whether it's in the United States or around the world, they're suffering, they're rebelling. Unfortunately, many of them are going to say, well, we need a strong leader that will give us stuff for free, and they don't understand economics, but they do know that they've been dumped on. But our job is to give them the economic and political message of why the middle class has been dumped on.
The next speaker, his name is Jeffrey Tucker, guys. Please give him a round of applause.
Sorry, guys. I don't know what that was. I think it was an ad on a article. But check that out. Ron Paul Liberty Report. You can go to ronpaullibertyreport.com, where they also have a lot of interesting articles. And also check out Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Now, you look at what goes on with the IMF, what goes on with the Federal Reserve. The Western world has adopted Keynesian economics, or Keynesian, however you want to pronounce it. They have adopted a system that is impossible to work because you have to be able to predict everything. Every, aspect of the economy, including social trends, it's almost impossible. People thought, organic wasn't going to pop off, and then it popped off a little bit, and then it died off, and people was like, see, organic movement, haha, and all of a sudden it just exploded. People weren't expecting that. Now there's actually pretty decent money to be made growing organic, non-GMO. There's actually a movement to go towards that. I wish to see that more here in Indiana. But when you look at a lot of the Midwest, stretching out west, there's a lot of push for this big agri to continue to go, and they try to go after people that kind of defy that. But now it's big money to go non-GMO, heirloom. And we've seen, I know we've seen in the past, I'm kind of getting off topic here, but we have seen in the past where Big Agri was trying to basically patent natural plants. So that's something to keep a lookout for here. Definitely with this move towards organic non-GMO. Will they try patent the naturals? Okay. Now I kind of want to get back to, how this, the economy is gone, and it's a system that our monetary policy is you can print money. We'll mess the interest rate up whenever we feel like it, create bubbles, pop bubbles, and put ourselves in a corner where, negative interest rates in the future are not an impossibility. And I have an article here, and this has to do with the whole Iran and U.S. cash exchange. This was out of Google UK. U.S. sent cash to Iran as Americans were freed. The Obama administration recently organized an airlift of $400 million worth of cash to Iran that coincided with the January release of 4 Americans detained in Tehran. According to U.S. and European officials and congressional staff briefed on the operation afterward, wooden pallets stacked with euros, Swiss francs, and other currencies were flown into Iran on an unmarked cargo plane. According to these officials, the U.S. procured the money from central banks of the Netherlands and Switzerland. They said the money represented the first installment of a $1.7 billion settlement the Obama administration reached with the Iran to resolve a decades-old dispute over a failed arms deal signed just before the 1979 fall of Iran's last monarch, Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The settlement, which resolved claims before an international tribunal, The Hague, also coincided with the formal implementation that same weekend of the landmark nuclear agreement reached between Tehran, the U.S., and other global powers the summer before. With the nuclear deal done, prisoners released, the time was right to resolve the dispute as well, President Obama said at the White House on January 17th without disclosing the $400 million cash payment. Senior U.S. officials denied any link between the payment and the prisoner exchange. They say the way the various strands came together simultaneously was coincidental, not the result of any quid pro quo. As we've made clear, the negotiations over the settlement of an outstanding claim were completely separate from the discussion about returning our American citizens home. State Department spokesman John Kirby said not only were the two negotiations separate, they were conducted by different teams on each side, including the case of the Hague claims, or Hague claims, by technical experts involved in these negotiations for many years, but U.S. officials also acknowledged the Iranian negotiators on the prisoner exchange said they wanted the cash to show they had gained something tangible. Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican from Arkansas and a fierce foe of the Iran nuclear deal, accused President Barack Obama of paying a $1.7 billion ransom to the Ayatollahs for U.S. hostages. This breaks a long-standing U.S. policy, put a price on the head of Americans, and has led Iran to continue its illegal seizures of Americans, he said. Since the cash shipment, the intelligence arm of the Revolutionary Guard has arrested two more Iranian Americans. Tehran has also detained dual nationals from France, Canada, and the UK in recent months. At the time of the prisoner release, Secretary of State John Kerry and the White House portrayed it as a very diplomatic breakthrough. Mr. Kerry cited the importance of the relationship forged and the diplomatic channels unlocked over the course of the nuclear talks. Meanwhile, U.S. officials have said they were certain Washington was going to lose the arbitration in the Hague, where Iran was seeking more than $10 billion, and described the settlement as a bargain for taxpayers. Iranian press reports have quoted senior Iranian defense officials describing the cash as a ransom payment. The Iranian Foreign Ministry didn't respond to a request for comment. The $400 million was paid in foreign currency because any transaction with Iran in the U.S. dollars is illegal under U.S. law. Sanctions also complicate Tehran's access to global banks. Sometimes the Iranians want cash because it's so hard for them to access things in the international financial system, said a senior U.S. official briefed on the January cash delivery. They know it can take months just to figure out how to wire money from one place to another. The Obama administration has refused to disclose how it paid any of the $1.7 billion, despite congressional inquiries outside of saying it wasn't paid in dollars. Lawmakers have expressed concern that the cash would be used by Iran to fund regional allies, including the Assad regime in Syria and the Lebanese militia Hezbollah, which the U.S. designates as a terrorist organization. The U.S. and the United Nations believe Tehran is subsidizing the Assad regime war in Syria through cash and energy shipments. Iran has acknowledged providing both financial and military aid to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and deploying Iranian soldiers there. But John Brennan, director of the Central Intelligence Agency, said last week there was evidence much of the money Iran has received from sanctions relief was being used for development projects. The revenue that's flowing into Iran is being used to support its currency, to provide monies to the departments and agencies, build up its infrastructure, Mr. Brennan said at a conference in Aspen, Colorado. The U.S. and Iran entered into secret negotiations to secure the release of Americans imprisoned in Iran in November 2014, according to U.S. and European officials. Switzerland's Foreign Minister Didier Burkhalter offered to host the discussions. And you can read the rest of that, but it really shows, it's illegal for us to give them U.S. dollars. So we just go to other, central banks and get other currencies. Well, how is that currency going to be paid back? U.S. dollars? U.S. currency? That's not a loophole. That's like something a child would pull. I didn't use U.S. dollars. I used euros. How did you get the euros? U.S. dollars. So you pay for it in U.S. dollars. And they know it. They use it as a loophole because, well, you didn't say I couldn't buy that and then use that. But yeah, since another article that was out of U.S. Today that was titled, "Despite Playing Full Cash to Iran, White House Denies Ransom Deal." What's funny about it is Newsbusters came out and had one that talked about CNN's New Day airs nearly 200 times more coverage on Trump controversies than Iran. On April 3rd. 84 minutes and 18 seconds of Trump controversies and 27 seconds about the money for Iran hostages. That was on Newsbusters. Because, again, we'll just print more, don't worry about it, whatever. Who cares? Well, you probably care. When the dollar in your pocket's worth less, you probably care. Okay. Now, as long as I didn't freeze up here. Okay. I got a few things I want to get into. I'm not sure exactly where to start, but let me go ahead and start with this one. If you didn't like the United Nations before, I mean, you might not like them after this article. This was out of IceAgeNow.info. Tax meat until it's too expensive to eat. New UN report suggests. said, did you vote for these people to tell you how to live and who will receive tax and what they will use it for? Meat should be taxed at the wholesale level to raise the price and deter consumption, says a new report from the UN's International Research Panel. This will supposedly save the environment and prevent global warming. I think it's extremely urgent, said Professor Martijn Hager of Utrecht University in the Netherlands, lead author of the report. All of the harmful effects on the environment and on health need to be priced into food products. Oh yeah. Why I tell people make sure you have seeds. If you can have land and your own small livestock, definitely probably chickens would be a good one. It'd probably be a good idea. Hager and the other members of the IRP assert that livestock creates 14.5% of the greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to climate change. Sneak the tax up on people rather than taxing the meat at the retail level in supermarkets and shops. Hager recommended taxing it at the wholesale level. We think it's better to price meat earlier in the chain. It's easier, said Hager. The evidence is accumulating that meat, particularly red meat, is just a disaster for the environment, agrees Rachel Promach, a columnist for the Washington Post. Wong blog. Agriculture today accounts for 1/3 of the global greenhouse gas emissions that promote global warming, says Premack, and half of those agriculture emissions come from livestock. Agriculture consumes 80% of water in the U.S., most of that being for meat, says Premack. For a kilogram of red meat, you need considerably more water than for plant products. Meanwhile, Denmark is considering a recommendation from its Ethics Council that all red meat should be taxed. Premack continues. The council argued in May that Danes were ethically obliged to reduce their consumption to curb greenhouse gas emissions. The IRP report, which was released in May, deserves serious consideration in the United States, said Premack. So, yeah, they want to come after your meat consumption. Because, again, we got to save the environment. Oh, I know volcanoes put off more, greenhouse gases than humans do. But, that's exactly, they're going to go off, so we just can't. We can't do this. We even though there's a lot of proof throughout history in science that a lot of these, CO2 emissions and how much carbon and all that, you look at history, and that's when plants and animals tended to thrive. More plants, more animals. And it's just, it's so funny because then, same with, we gotta, BLM has to come in, Bureau of Land Management has to come in to save a tortoise, but then they will quickly lease land to oil and coal and all kinds of other industries, even, foreign owned. State foreign owned sometimes. It's really just, it's so hypocritical and unbelievable. And, a lot of these people that will help push this, we'll be able to afford it. And it's funny because, well, they can sit down and have the best steak, but you probably couldn't even have a roast beef sandwich. That's what'll happen. We are seeing the elimination of the middle class. And there's going to be the rich and the ultra rich at one end. They'll be able to, the rich will be able to have a steak once a week, and the ultra rich could have one every day. While the poor people couldn't have much roast beef. They'll get limited on how much, hamburger they can have, or you'll have to choose. Do you want roast beef or hamburger? That's your choice for the week. And this stuff is meant to help further that division. And it's been, talked about many times. I've talked about on here about, that the poor will be convinced that to have that, they have to support the ultra rich, and the ultra rich will ultimately get their funding from the rich. So you understand how it works. We already see it happening now, where you got the ultra rich. We should tax the rich. Oh, I don't see you paying more taxes voluntarily. It becomes one of those things. They're saying it because they need to tax the middle class. They need to get rid of that stepping stone. They need to, get rid of the bridges. And we're also seeing how they want to create chaos. Okay. Give me a second here as I try to get this going. Maybe. Okay, here it's going. This one's from We Are Change, and this is titled, What Hillary Clinton Did to Haiti Will Scare You Not Vote for Her. To not vote for her. So let's go ahead and fire this up.
This is Ogrodowski of WeAreChange.org here in Philadelphia at a protest against Hillary Rodham Clinton. As you can see, there's a large number of people from the Haitian community who are pissed off at Hillary Rodham Clinton. If you don't understand geopolitics, this is the video for you. We're going to explain everything that you need to know about what Hillary Clinton and the Clinton family did to Haiti. I'm here joined by Joseph. Joseph, can you explain to us, why is the Haitian community mad at Hillary Clinton?
Well, we have every reason to be mad because the Clintons have destroyed Haiti for the decades. And, they pretend to be our friends when in reality they are our number one enemies. There are some other people who clearly behave like they don't like us. So it's easy for us to protect ourselves against them because we know they are our enemies. But the Clintons are even more dangerous because they pretend to be our friends when in reality they're destroying Haiti.
Because I heard that the Clinton Foundation and all these other organizations gave over $6 billion to Haiti for the relief effort, especially during the kind of natural disasters that you guys have gone through. Is that true?
No, it's more than true. The money is much more than $6 billion. You see, after the earthquake, countries around the world donate billions of dollars. The amount was much larger than $6 billion. And Bill Clinton was in charge of the money. And not only people around the world, but also American celebrities donate a lot of larger money to rebuild Haiti. And hundreds of homes were destroyed after the earthquake. And if you can believe, the people are still living under tents. That's unacceptable. And not only they held the money, they kept the money, but Haiti had enough resources for them to be very comfortable. Haiti have oil, more oil than Venezuela. Nobody's talking about. Haiti have gold. We have one of the largest gold mine in the Caribbean. So, and they let the world, nobody's saying anything about our goals. Yeah. And who do you think is in charge of our goal right now? The contract. Yeah. Tony Rodham, Hillary Clinton's brother. Wow. He's got a 26 years contract. And then also Haiti used to produce, we used to produce our own rice. We didn't have to buy rice overseas. Bill Clinton destroyed our rice so his brother can sell the rice from Arkansas. Yeah, wow. So they're doing a lot of things. Right now, if there's a millionaire or a billionaire who wants to do business in Haiti, they cannot do anything unless they check with the Clintons. The Clintons are the one who's running Haiti. Yeah, wow. And we are living in the 21st century. We are the first black people who liberate ourselves from the French rule. We fought 3 empires, the British, the Spanish, the French. So it's unacceptable for us to be occupied right now. They dropping disease in Haiti. They stealing our money. They stealing our resources. So we are out here. We are outraged for the crimes of the Clintons. Hillary Clinton have too much criminal records. She have no business running for president, especially for the news that came out in the email. Find out that the DMC made all these tricks in order to favor Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, they rigged the system. Yeah. But my question is, when it comes to Hillary Clinton's brother, how was he able to get that contract? How were the Clintons allowed to have such control of Haiti?
It's a family affair. Bill Clinton, the United Nations named him the chief guy who was in charge of rebuilding Haiti, and then while Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State. So it's a family thing. Chelsea Clinton, all the Clinton Foundation, they're just stealing money. And most of the money, I can tell you right now, I know they have a lot of speech for money around the world and for Wall Street, but most of the money they have right now is from Haiti, from the Haitians. And when they're letting the world know we are poor, let me give you one simple example. If you are super rich, and then I would go and tell the whole world that you are poor for years, for decades, and then everybody believes you're poor, and then I would come out and steal your money, and then you go and let everybody know I stole your money. They're gonna think you crazy because everybody knows, the world knows Haiti is the poorest country when we are not. We are rich. Haiti used to call the island of Pearl. Haiti is still rich. So there are Haitian lawyers, Haitian doctors everywhere they are millionaires who wants to go and spend their money in Haiti. But the United States government, not only they stealing our resources, our money, they create kidnapping. Now we are even afraid to go to Haiti. You cannot walk in the streets in Haiti. And then what the Clintons, they own the hotel, they go everywhere, they do whatever they want. This is unacceptable. I myself, I'm ready to die. I want the whole world to know who the Clintons are. This have to stop. This have to stop. It's time for us to stand up. We cannot take this any longer.
Amazing information. Where can people find out more about the resources of how the Clintons ultimately now control Haiti? Is there a website? Is there any other information that you want to share?
There is a website. I'm not the leader of this group, but you can check with him. He'll give you all the information. Mm-hmm. Okay, and also you can go to YouTube. You're gonna see our videos. You can put you can put Haitian American Joseph Matthew, and then you're gonna see the first video would be me exposing the Clintons in front of the Trump Tower. We know, so we have a lot of videos, and in terms of information, we have flyers, we have a website. But like I said, my leader over here, he will give you all the other information that you need.
Because we saw the investigations into where a lot of the relief funds for Haiti came into, and it ultimately went nowhere to the people but big multinational corporations. And a lot of the people who are still dealing with that natural disaster never got any relief because all the money that was funneled into them, even through the Red Cross, even through the Clinton Global Initiative, which the Clinton Global Initiative sometimes uses and brags, like, look, we helped out Haiti. We did this for Haiti. What did they do for Haiti, and what's the current situation there?
What have the Clinton, not only Haiti, what have the Clinton done with their foundation? They don't help anyone. They're just enriching themselves. Going, stealing people's money, resources. That's what they do. We're asking friends, the American friends, to stand up with us. This is unacceptable. We cannot allow this to happen. We are living in the 21st century. We cannot allow a liar, a crooked, a thief to be president. We cannot allow that to happen. If that happened, I will have no respect for America or United States anymore. Because I used to believe America was the greatest country in the world, but there is no more justice anymore. Because the American justice is crooked. Look how they're supporting Hillary Clinton. This is unacceptable.
Thank you so much for the information. Thank you so much for the passion. A lot of people in America do not know this. Is there any other information you want to leave us with when it comes to the Clintons, when it comes to the situation in Haiti right now?
Well, other information I can tell you, you need to go and Google yourself to find out about our resources, you know, what's really happening in Haiti. And right now, even though there's a lot of poverty in Haiti, but there's two sides in Haiti. There is a bourgeois who's living in Haiti. Haiti is not all poor. Haiti, there's a lot of Haitians, they don't even come here. They go to Europe. They go to Italy on vacation. They go to France. They're the one who's holding the wealth of Haiti, and then they're the one that the Clintons are supporting, because as long they let the peasant Haitian suffering, they are under the tents, and they're okay. As long the bourgeois are okay, that's why they separate the money, the relief money. So all this corruption needs to be stopped. There's too much corruption in the government. Too much corruption. So all my life, I believe America is a country where you have justice, you have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, but I don't see it anymore. So we have too much resources for us to be suffering right now.
Yep, you're definitely right about that, Joseph. Thank you so much. Your link will be in the description below of this video. Again, look what Hillary Clinton did to Haiti. Imagine what she's going to do to this country when she's president. Subscribe. We're going to have a lot more information coming here your way on youtube.com/wearechange. One last thing.
One last thing. You see, the Clintons, they don't like black people. They pretend to like us. Bill Clinton signed more laws to incarcerate, to put black people in jail. That's a fact. It's been in the news. All the Democrats are doing for the blacks. The blacks, some of them are waking up right now. All they do is vote for Democrats. The Democrats, all they're doing is more welfares, more jails, more food stamps. We need more than that. We need opportunities. There's all of us, many of us are educated. We need more schools. And then a lot of black people are in jail right now because of Bill Clinton. You know, all the crime bills, NAFTA, everything. So we are not allowed to. Right now, we don't even have a president. If we choose a president, they don't want. The Clintons want to be the one who choose a president for us. That's unacceptable. We don't even have a. We cannot have. We don't have an election right now because of the Clintons. This needs to be stopped because they chose the one we had before was Michel Martelly. He was a crackhead, a guy who's putting down his pen, doing all corruption. He's the one that the Clintons support. And then on his administration, the Clintons was allowed to steal billions of dollars in Haiti. So this is why they do not want us to choose a president of our own. We need to govern our own country. We need to be able to trade with other countries because we have gold, we have uranium, we have oil, we have marble, we have everything. So it's time for us, just leave us alone. Stop saying we are poor. We don't even need help from the United States. We have enough resources to trade with China, with other countries, because we are the first black Republic Haitian who free ourselves from slavery. We even fought for Americans' independence, but nobody wants to give us credit for what we have done. So I'm sick and tired of it, and all the Haitians are sick and tired of it. So I thank you for hearing our cry, because we need more American to support us to expose what the Clintons are doing to our country.
The situation is dire in Haiti, and it's mainly because of the Clintons. This information needs to get out, and it will only get out with you sharing this video, getting the word out there, because the mainstream media will not talk about this. Get it out there. Thank you again so much for watching.
Just look into what a lot of the Clinton global initiative and, you know, where they're very involved in places, and you start seeing patterns. Just look into it. Don't take my word for it. Research it yourself. And I think global initiative is a very, very telling title. They have a global initiative. Do you not think, as Secretary of State, do you not think she wanted that position for a reason? If she has a global initiative, why would you name your foundation a global initiative? People that have global initiatives, I don't exactly think that those are probably the people we want to vote into positions of any power. And then people are like, well, yeah, that's why I'm voting for Trump. He's a nationalist. People that are in it to control a nation are probably the people you want. How about someone that wants to hold the politicians just as accountable as the everyday citizen? And, you know, maybe look at the Bill of Rights. Could be a good stepping stone, maybe. Now, when you have people that are very passionate, that are immigrants, and they're like, you know, don't ruin America. You know, this is supposed to be a place where people have opportunity. Why would you take your own opportunity away for handouts from the government? Why would you turn yourself into a slave? You probably should take a step back. And I see the same with kind of Trump, where you become a slave to a nation state rather than, you know, a slave to globalism. You know, it's when you're willing to give up rights, certain rights, to prevent other rights from being taken away, you're not fighting a winning battle. Because what you're doing is setting precedent that says, hey, you know, we can, you know, take someone's rights away. We've already set the precedent that you can chip away at people's rights. You can go, well, you know, freedom of speech, that we'll kind of define what we consider. You know, if it's offensive, I think we might want to start looking into going, hey, we got to kind of censor offensive. Like, no. Because everything can be construed as offensive. If you don't agree with it, it's offensive. And that's become a basis for most people's arguments. You can't talk that way because I don't like it, so it's offensive. You can't call them that because I don't like it, so it's offensive. Well, you can chip away at the Second Amendment. You can't let them have Foliato, even though we got Foliato. You can't let them have Foliato. Back to the First Amendment, can't lie about someone. But, politicians, we can lie. Because we're politicians, They want all this privacy. They can have all these be in powerful positions with closed door meetings, but Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, we don't like that for you. It's just, it's a complete hypocritical system where they'll nitpick your rights, but they exploit the same things that they nitpick for you, they exploit them to a greater extent for themselves. To the point they can break laws and not be charged because, well, prosecutors in the right mind charge. What are you thinking? Talking with quite a few people about the movie Idiocracy and how something so crazy of a movie, so many things are really just a exaggeration of what we see right now, and it's mind-boggling. Water, it's mind-boggling. It's hard for me to even go, this is real. This is really going on in my lifetime. And again, I've told people this before, I'm right on that edge of being a millennial. But most of my friends and most of my growing up culture was a generation that the end of that Generation X culture, that's who I relate to for the most part. Again, green screen Apple computers and, the big old bulky cell phones when they first came out, that people could actually walk around with cell phones. Holy crap. And it became something that you started seeing popping up in more and more places. I've tried to talk to some millennials, and they really just, they have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And I'm like, even the propagandized education that I received, you've seen the propaganda in it. But you got quite a few facts that at least could, as long as you were somewhat independent minded, you figured out that not all is exactly how they talked about. Columbus wasn't exactly the first person to discover America. And plus, can you really discover America if the Native Americans were already here? Something, it was understood. But, I don't know what, or if any real true education is going on in the public school system right now. I definitely don't think that grades are truly reflective of the education they receive anymore. And we know they're changing the whole grading scale and all that for this Common Core, which is basically redefining what being intelligent or smart or having a high IQ is. Why would they do that? Because if they are truly dumbing down our youth, they can't make it evident. They can't say, hey, lower IQ. It seems like a scheme. It really seems like a scheme. Now, we know these, Common Core is going on. We know the grading scales are being changed. It's either a scheme or they're really this stupid. I still believe they are trying to push an agenda. And if their agenda and their ideology isn't backed up by facts, then they will change what people believe are the facts. And I think that's what we actually see going on. Now let me see if I can find this here. Maybe. I don't know if this is going to load. Okay. No, still didn't pop up. Okay, there it went. This out of the Libertarian Republic. And, I'll cover Trump here in a few minutes. But I do try to bring up third party, even though I'm not, a big Gary Johnson supporter. I bring up third party for the simple fact, stop looking at just two parties. If the American people get used to looking at third parties as, an option, which we're starting to see more of it, where you've seen Ron Paul supporters go, hey, who's the Libertarian candidate? You did see Bernie Sanders supporters go, hey, who is the Green Party candidate? Let's not make two different parties again out of it. Let's literally have, independence. Individual ideologies that, you just say what you mean. What you truly believe. Have a history, a community that backs up and says, hey, he doesn't just say that he believes this way and acts this way or, follows this ideology or philosophy. He actually does. He's not just giving mouth service to it. Again, a lot of that goes right back to something I always talk about. That's the local level. Being able to create communities and, hats off to the whole Free State Project and that whole ideology and philosophy of, Let's create that community we talk about. It might not be for everyone, but it's a chance to show how it can work. And I really think that's why they chose New Hampshire, is the live free or die state. So it's, I think that it could be a shining example that could even spread the ideology and the philosophy of freedom and liberty around the country and the world. And it'll start when communities stand together for individuals, where you don't just come in around and start pushing people around. You just don't. If they're not a threat to others, and they're not harming others, and they're not stealing from others, then let them live. Live and let live. I think that's something that can eventually grow like wildfire, because in that same thing, it gives more opportunities, and it doesn't play mouth service to being able to create this utopia. It's understanding, you do have problems in society. You do have legitimate threats in society. It just takes one compound of it. Let's not create something that gives that mouth service and only compounds on the problems. And people are like, oh, anarchy. No, it's not anarchy. It's freedom. Because anarchy has become a dirty word because the left uses it so much. It's hard. Yeah, it's anarchy if you understand what anarchy truly is. And it's not no rules, it's no rulers. And that's the problem. We also get those left anarchists that say, no, it means no rules. No rules, anarchy, no rules. Do whatever you want. No, it don't. True anarchy kind of follows a somewhat libertarian type philosophy. Anarcho-socialism is it's a theft of a word, just like liberalism has been stolen. It was I don't think it was Teddy Roosevelt. It's one of the Roosevelts that really hijacked the term liberalism and destroyed its history, because it people always talk about the classic liberals like Thomas Jefferson. It was hijacked. And when we look at terminology, we see a constant propagandizing, using terminology to redefine it, so not to change the wording of something, but change the meaning of it. And when you see that, and then you see how the youth is educated, if you change the meaning of the words, then what they read has a different meaning. Now, I have this out of the Libertarian Republic. Shocking debate commission may give an inch to third party for 15%. Trump's debate complaints may have just unintentionally helped Libertarian Party and Gary Johnson. One of the keys to getting elected as president of the United States is to first participate in the presidential debates. However, actually getting into the debates has almost always been a problem with third-party candidates. Gary Johnson, who is currently the closest by far to reaching the minimum debate commission requirements of 15% in polling, filed a lawsuit in September of last year to include both Libertarian and Green candidates in the debates, but the lawsuit may not be necessary for Gary Johnson to be included after all. As CNBC reports that Frank Fahrenkopf, co-chairman of the Commission on Presidential Debates, suggested the commission might consider giving an inch to a third-party candidate who is close enough to the cutoff point. This is following Republican nominee Donald Trump's complaints about the debates using the term rigged, even though the commission set the debate schedule over a year ago. Trump is complaining about two scheduled debate dates, while the minor parties have complained for decades that there is an active effort to keep them out of the debates entirely, especially after recently raising the requirements to 15% in polls. While commonly being unmentioned in the actual polling, Trump has enjoyed the Republican Party's major party status to always being mentioned in the polls, and yet voices dissatisfaction beyond the privileged polling to the debate commission. However, he may have triggered the commission to show some leniency to a third party in response to a growing concern of minor parties feeling blocked from the debates. The act of good faith may actually help out some of the negative images of the bipartisan commission has received concerning a rigged system. For many others, this reach is actually extended to include a third-party candidate. Even Roger Stone, political insider and Trump confidant, tweets, "Real Donald Trump should insist Gary Johnson and Dr. Jill Stein be included in any televised debate." However, Trump may not want to share the debate stage with what he describes as fringe candidates if he's complaining about two dates. Wouldn't he also complain about sharing his speaking time? It appears the commission's more important concerns may be to become more generous to minor party complaints rather than a couple of dates that were scheduled over a year ago. Also, it may be considered less rigged if there's a future tripartisan rather than just a bipartisan commission consisting of only two current old parties. Again, that's at thelibertarianrepublic.com. Go check it out. And I just don't see really any good coming out of it. I don't think that third party will be. I wish a true libertarian candidate could be elected. I don't think we have a true libertarian candidate, which many have pointed that out. But do we have a candidate that will slow down or stop government growth in our private lives? That will stop the infringement on our rights? That's a big question. Because if they want any type of power, then I just don't see it. Not with the infrastructure and the mechanisms that are already in place. I just don't see it. Okay, I want to get to a clip here. And this is from Reason TV on YouTube. You can also go to reason.com. How Brazil's libertarian movement helped bring down a president. Let's go ahead and bring this up here.
People really do not want state putting their fingers on their lives.
Coming up, Reason TV travels to Brazil for a look at how a group of libertarian activists helped bring down a president.
It definitely says great things about Brazilian democracy.
Why is libertarianism catching on so fast in Brazil?
And that is you win over undecided voters right there.
More than understand our ideas, people have to like our ideas.
If they want to be cool, they don't need to be on the left. They can be in our group.
Now this is kind of my life.
Can these young activists help defeat the big government populism, stifling the economy of Latin America's most populous nation?
This is the worst recession we've had in recorded history.
It's like an office wannabe, but we are not like serious guys, so it's not technically an office.
In this cavernous production studio, a group of mostly 20-somethings work through the night, often sleeping by their desks. They're making videos, uploading content to social media, and strategizing.
We're a group of friends, and things do not work well if the guys who are entering our team don't become a friend of us.
This is the headquarters of the Free Brazil movement. It's the centerpiece of the country's growing libertarian movement, and the group has already helped bring about a remarkable turn of events. The Free Brazil movement has been a driving force behind the ongoing impeachment of Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, who in May was forced to step down. A left-wing populist, Rousseff was impeached for fiscal impropriety.
It definitely says great things about Brazilian democracy. We always had politicians just running free and doing whatever they wanted with public money. So this is a very, very big deal.
But the impeachment effort probably would have fizzled if the Free Brazil movement hadn't helped organize a succession of demonstrations that involved millions of anti-Rousseff protesters. The anger of the Brazilian people with their government was cast in explicitly libertarian terms.
In Brazil, all the people are libertarian in many ways. Like, people really do not want state putting their fingers on their lives. When you start to explain those things, people, oh yeah, the government's way too big. Yeah, this is the real problem.
Vocês querem esperar? Vocês querem sobrar com aquilo?
To keep the pressure on for removing Rousseff from office, members of the Free Brazil movement led a 33-day march from Sao Paulo to the federal capital of Brasilia. It was a 750-mile trek, which they did while carrying an impeachment bill to deliver to Congress. After arriving in Brasilia, they sat down with congressional leaders to make their case.
Pedimos para estarem irmanados conosco, não apenas o pedido de impeachment, mas nas pautas das ruas,
Porque esse é um momento histórico, We are going to defeat the socialists in Brazil the way that they hate most, by democracy.
Brazil is now in the second year of recession, and this is the worst recession we've had in recorded history.
The Brazilian economy has been contracting over the last couple years, and the unemployment rate recently climbed above 11%. On the 2016 Index of Economic Freedom, which categorizes countries based on the level of government interference in the private economy, Brazil ranked 122nd. Starting a new business in Brazil takes about 14 times as long as it does in the United States, according to the World Bank. Here's the big mystery in Brazil and in much of Latin America. How is it that so many citizens continue to believe that government can solve their country's problems, despite so much lived experience to the contrary? The theory behind the libertarian movement in Brazil is that most people derive their politics not from reasoning, but from culture. So the way to change public policy is to create a new cultural identity that's all about freedom.
If you want to be cool, you have to be from the left. If you are not from the left, you are a guy who don't like gays, you don't like poor people, you don't like black people. What is the Brazil movement? Brazil movement is other way young guy or a young girl go. They don't need to be on the left group now. They can be in our group.
To promote this new libertarian cultural identity, the Free Brazil movement functions in part as an alternative media outlet with its more than 1.3 million Facebook followers.
Now, I wanted to pause it there real quick to say, you know, a lot of people think, oh, you know, libertarians, they go be a smooth transaction. You could just go free. You could let everybody free from this, you know, fallacy that they live in right now. And I say, well, you kind of have to, but it's not going to be easy. And Brazil's, you know, been noticing this, but that's why the education of it has to continue. That's why alternative media is so important. And I wanted to cover that before they really kind of get into the alternative media side of it. But education, the spreading of knowledge, all of this is extremely important to the idea of freedom, because it's what allows people to have that freedom is the knowledge. And this is something that I hope not only, you know, Brazil, but, you know, places like New Hampshire where it can spread here in America, we can get that idea of freedom back. And the Constitution can be that stepping stone towards that libertarian ideology. And it's something that's so crucial to really not just look at the Constitution as, hey, you know, we could have a Constitution. No, it's, you know, what's the idea behind a lot of, you know, the rights? It's freedom and understanding that. And when you can have more societies that understand it, you won't need borders. And that's the idea of a libertarian borderless society, not a globalist controlled borderless society where you just, well, we don't have borders because, well, the whole globe is controlled, or, you know, half of the globe is controlled, or a third of the globe is controlled by us. So you really don't need a border between Canada, Mexico, and, you know, the U.S. and all that because, well, we control it all anyways. No, we're talking libertarian borderless society where the idea of freedom is beyond borders. Where, you know, if people believe in the idea of freedom in Mexico the same way they believe in it on the other side of the border here in America, you go, hey, you know, you don't exactly need that border anymore. You know, yeah, there's a border there, but we trade freely. Government doesn't interfere. We had that before on our southern border. Look into history and see where border control actually came from. It was the growth of government, and they used fear to create the border control, really. But back to this clip.
The media in Brazil receives lots of money from the government, and we had to create a sort of parallel media. In terms of Facebook, we're stronger than any politician in Brazil, and we have more views, more reach than any media group.
Maconho socialista, dia 5 de outubro, vote no Batista, raio privatizador.
As a video production shop, the Free Brazil movement scored one of its biggest hits in 2014 with the joke advertisement for Paulo Batista, a long-shot candidate for the Sao Paulo state legislature.
This is a politician flying with a tie and spreading the libertarian message using a beam that comes from his eyes that turns bad public services into good private services.
It drew a front-page story in the New York Times and was featured on the John Oliver Show.
Perhaps my favourite candidate this year is this guy, Paulo Bautista, who seems to be running on a platform of having laser vision that can transform the country, and who ends the ad by flying through space for 20 solid seconds. We have not edited this. This is genuinely how his campaign ad ends. And that is how you win over undecided voters right there.
The video was aimed not at promoting Batista's candidacy, but at rebranding the concept of privatization.
Privatizing, that was a word that the left made a disaster in terms of public policy. It became something that people, it's nice. Because people were starting to use as a meme, like, oh, I had a girlfriend who's not looking pretty nice in this picture, so she receives the privatizing bean and she becomes hot. We have footage from our demonstrations where like thousands of people are screaming in the middle of avenues, we should privatize those public companies now!
Critics of the Free Brazil movement say that its message has mostly caught on with the middle class in Sao Paulo and the South, making less traction in Brazil's far poorer northern states.
Brazil is a very, very poor country. So to be fiscally conservative, you have to convince, and this is the hard part, you have to convince people that being fiscally conservative means, in the medium to longer term, having more money to spend in education and health.
A primeira razão para pedir o impeachment da Dilma é o preço da gasolina.
Enter 20-year-old Kim Kataguri, the grandson of Japanese immigrants, a part-time law student in Sao Paulo, and the Free Brazil movement's biggest star. One of his specialties is communicating how free market reforms benefit the poor.
Just observe what the left has already done. They've created the perfect formula. More than understand our ideas, people have to like our ideas. So I think that's the great secret. We have like 205 million people in Brazil. I mean, you will never make 205 million people understand any idea in a profound way. Education, for an example. We don't explain that the voucher system is more efficient and it has worked in other countries and the private companies can take a better care of the schools. We just ask, so do you want the poor people to study in the same school as the rich people? I mean, it really looks like a leftist speech, but we're defending voucher system. Selling to the people ideals of not only liberty, but also of equality, and showing that equality is not only a value of the leftists, but we also can do it.
On a Thursday evening, a group of college students meet up at a bar in a residential neighborhood of Sao Paulo. They're members of Students for Liberty, an international organization that brings together libertarians on campus. It has a presence in 107 countries, including the U.S. But based on the count of local coordinators who've signed up with the group, the Brazilian chapter is bigger than Students for Liberty in every other country combined.
Everybody can see that government is not working for us as it should. I was thinking if there's any option, and I discovered that is. And now this is kind of my life.
Bom, eu virei libertária através de textos liberais, a princípio era mais conservadora, e conheci Mises, Hayek, conheci Walter Block, e me identifiquei com a ideologia deles, e passei a pesquisar mais a fundo, e me encontrei no libertarianismo.
The reason Students for Liberty has seen exponential growth in Brazil, in contrast to other countries, is something of a mystery. Mariana Leon points to the collapse of socialism in the region, particularly in Venezuela.
So I think that this is the secret, is when everybody starts to realize that we can go from here to somewhere worse.
It may also be that the Brazilian branch of Students for Liberty has particularly good organizational tactics. Coordinator Rony Stepanato Rodriguez recruits new members by spending about 2 hours a day listening in as strangers discuss the latest news on Facebook. When he finds someone making libertarian-sounding arguments, he reaches out.
It's like a headhunter. They are in the way to be a libertarian, and I always say, hey, I have this book. Do you want to read?
The libertarian movement in Brazil would never have gotten off the ground if it weren't for a handful of think tanks that started laying the groundwork many years ago. One major player is Mises Brazil, which occupies a shared office in this building in downtown Sao Paulo, and is unaffiliated with the US-based think tank with the same name. The chief of operations is 24-year-old Gianluca Lorenzon.
The question that I asked myself was, why we talk about freedom in our songs, in our lyrics, in our poetry all the time, but simply this doesn't reflect on politics? And the reason is because we didn't have content.
Mises Brazil publishes daily articles on libertarian issues and gets about 1 million page views per month. It's also both commissioned and brought back into print Portuguese translations of the major works of Austrian economics. Mises Brazil was founded in 2007 by investment banker Ilio Batrao. He says the intellectual climate in Brazil has undergone a profound shift.
They would look at me like Elias read something that made him crazy. And I think that changed over the last 10 years, or maybe less. And now they only think I'm radical.
Now that libertarian activists have helped push Dilma Rousseff out of office, where does that leave the country? Rousseff was replaced by her vice president, Michel Temer, a former congressman who's been in politics for nearly 30 years. Temer has been implicated in Brazil's ongoing corruption scandals.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most corrupt, I would say he's a 6.
Though libertarians have little faith in Temer the person, they say the impeachment has created political incentives that are leading him to make some positive changes.
What Temer is betting his government on is to bring about much needed economic reforms to get unemployment down. And he's counting on this to happen in like 6 or 8 months so he can stay in office.
The politicians have interest in maximize their time in office. And if we turn libertarian ideas politically profitable, then in either way we're going to win. And I think it's good not to have this populist figure of the person who brought us freedom. Who will bring freedom to the people is the ideas themselves.
The impeachment is just the start of the game. And we should put the pressure over him, kick all those corrupt guys who are there, and they are still there, and pressure him to make the good economical and the good democratic reforms that we need to change our political system.
I don't see any way of changing policy besides getting involved in politics.
There's also a movement afoot to elect actual libertarians to political office. 31-year-old economist Fabio Osterman has been an important behind-the-scenes figure in libertarian circles, and now he's running for mayor of Puerto Alegre, a southern city with a population of about 1.5 million.
I think Brazilian libertarians are getting ready to take this next step.
Osterman has led a takeover of Brazil's Social Liberal Party, which is planning to put forward many more libertarian political candidates in the near future.
We're a party that defends both gay marriage, decriminalization of marijuana, and also, of course, free markets, free trade, deregulation of the economy, privatizations. And we know that we will be displeasing a lot of people by defending these ideas, but we feel like it's the right thing to do. We're not yet a libertarian country. We're actually very far from that, unfortunately. But this is a very special moment for libertarians in Brazil because we're showing up as an option, as an alternative.
Sorry, I was muted there. That was from Reason TV, Reason.com. Go check them out, subscribe, and check out the articles at Reason.com. Now, it's kind of amazing to see, you would think that with what we've seen with, Ron Paul's candidacy in 2008 running, and you've seen the libertarian movement grow so quick in a short amount of time. You tended to think, hey, maybe, it's going to boom. The idea of freedom and liberty is just going to spread like wildfire again through America, and we'll see that revival of, let's start thinking of a philosophy and idea of freedom, not government control, because we have been on this path for such a long time that we need freedom. And I think that's what a lot of maybe the youth is kind of rebelling against, is that restriction, that ability not to be free, where they break any rule they can, skateboarding, whatever, because it's one of those things. I grew up in the skateboarding and the inline skating, aggressive skating, and I think that the rebellion has grown without any true guidance, because definitely in the public school and the universities, they blame it on the wrong people to further their agenda, and we aren't seeing results because of it, because we restrict and regulate even more, only to make things worse, to try to justify maybe state control of industries. So it's, I think if you really look at it, which I think a lot of Brazilians have taken a step back and really looked at it, and I can see the libertarian movement growing here if we can reach people the right way. I think we have to stay up with the technology, even though it's very intrusive. Take the steps, but we have to use all these outlets to continue to reach. I don't want the smartphone, I don't want a Facebook page, I don't want this, I don't want that. But in reality, if we fall into the crevices of history, we only foster the growth of this ideology. Wherever the youth is going is where you need to be able to reach. And I don't blame people from being fearful, but I think if you're smart enough, then there really isn't anything to fear. Take that any way you want, but it plays a special role in the way we use technology, and we have to reach out. You can even use some of the anonymous apps, like what was that one, Yik Yak, where you're just anonymous and you reach people around you that are located near you, and you can just send messages, and they don't know who you are. So you can spread websites that way. You can use some of the big apps too to reach people, and just be smart about it. I know people that they don't leave their cell phone in their bedrooms, and take whatever steps you feel necessary to protect your privacy. But we have to look at some of these Snapchat, Instagram. There's so many out there anymore, and again, anonymous apps like Yak. I think we really have to. I've been looking into a lot of where people are. Definitely, the youth are spending a lot of their time, and it's getting interesting to see how this whole dynamic of technology and where it's shifting towards, and to how these big tech companies are kind of manipulating what is being seen, and how can we work around these mechanisms being in place to control information to alter that. I think it's worth sharing these other search engines that protect your IP address and are encrypted, or all these other things that break some of those algorithms out of it. And it'd be interesting to see if we can keep technology in our back pocket in a way that we can spread the information, not a way that is only benefiting government and the controllers that want to control a population and dictate to them. So it becomes one of those things that it takes time and effort to not let freedom die. They say, freedom is never free. You have to be willing to stand up for what you believe in and spread knowledge and information. And that's really the only way we're going to defeat evil. People that believe they have the right to control others. We will see what comes of this election. I like I said, I have no idea where this is going, but I don't see a great way out of it. I have optimism for many Americans and their ability to stand together and fight for what's right, but not all Americans. Because I think that voting for many of these candidates shows a willingness to feed into fear and control. And with a lot of these riots I've seen, it's a willingness to feed into the divide and conquer. And that's going to be part of the next stage of America. Where do we go from here? I think education with the youth is one of the places we must start now, and the education of more adults through media, alternative media, UCY.tv, Anti-Tyranny.news.com, all the other great broadcasts and websites associated with the broadcasts on this network. Check them out and share them. It's something that we have to take these steps to do it. I want to thank everyone again for tuning in to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Don't forget UCY.tv. Scroll down to the bottom, Amazon button. Same great price, same great shipping, and we get a little kickback at UCY to help cover this broadcast and others. And antityrannynews.com/MyPatriot. Check out My Patriot Supply for non-GMO seeds and food supplies and other prepping gear. Check them out, and that also helps cover operating costs on this end when you shop through that link, antityrannynews.com/MyPatriot, and UCY.tv. Scroll down at the bottom, Amazon button. Thank you again for tuning in tonight, and stay tuned here on UCY.tv. Great broadcast coming up after this. Thanks again, and I'll see you this Friday.
alive.